revolting. Barking up the wrong tree. There is no food here. You can put the drool away. I'm sure Peter will be out soon with roast goat or chickens or something. If you guys want whiskey, I got you covered, but otherwise you gotta wait. Good morning. This is Bill from Curious Cars on another glorious, wonderful Naples, Florida morning. I mean, we've had a bunch of them lately, so all my complaints about the weather are out the window, at least for now, you know. It started to get a little warm again in the afternoon, but the mornings have been so nice and the evenings nice that there's no chance I can complain. This is the time to be here. This is good weather. This is great. I'm very happy, and life is pretty good weather-wise. That's probably the only place it's good, but, you know, I'll get into that later. Very quickly, I want to thank Mr. Pete from the UK, a very nice gentleman, and his girls. Sent for Christmas, actually to Peter's house. He must have spied the address. 2 very lovely Waterford whiskey glasses, which are now getting used extensively. Or not this morning, I used the flask, but they are being used, and, you know, they're terrific. And, you know, my mom, God rest her soul, how disappointed she'd be in me by now, used to collect Waterford, so it's a really nice thing. That was very kind. Peter gave it to me after Christmas, so I'm a bit late on the thank you, but it is much appreciated, and it was a wonderful surprise. Thanks very much, Mr. Pete. Very quickly, we'll get into a couple of things. Unlike Mr. Pete, there are some terrible people in my life, Chris amongst them, worst human on earth. We've talked about him. Right now, I'm in this mad dash to get everything out of, you know, I've got a bunch of cars I've got to sell, I've got to get rid of. I want to move up to North Carolina, at least for the bulk of the year. I'm still looking for places up there, which, you know, has been a little bit miserable. A friend of mine, Penelope, she bought a place in the mountains in a town, Murphy, North Carolina, where I had absolutely no intention of going. I was looking at Boone and Banner Elk and, you know, otherwise maybe Marshall or Maggie Valley. But she's got me... If anybody knows anything about Murphy, could you put it in the comment section or post it over on Twitter or X or whatever the hell it is now? I'd like some kind of an inside scoop because I'm just not sold yet. And, you know, before I make a major life change, you know, I want to make sure I'm going to be happy there. Also, if you own a used car lot anywhere near there, that'd be great. I could use a little help when I get there. But anyway, I digress. So I'm in this mad rush to get everything going, get everything cleaned, sold. And Chris will show up like Elvis at the shop, and just all productivity comes to a screeching halt. He can even makes Robert the German stop working. I mean, the guy just has this aura about him where, you know, where he shows up, nothing productive can ever happen. And it's beyond irritating. It really honestly is. Al is there a lot, you know, he pretends he tries to help. He's very cheap, Al, but, you know, he at least puts in some modicum, some residue of effort, where Chris just does none of that. Absolutely none of that at all. But anyway, I'm working on it. I'm getting there, and hopefully I can knock a few of these cars out. This is one of them, finally. It's been sitting for a while. One that I was very anxious to do, and it's nice to have it. And what it is a 1991 Lincoln Mark VII LSC. Where do I start on this? So look, this is obviously a car of my youth. This was one of the cars that was contemporary to me when I was a kid, when I was you know, when cars were everything to me. You know, when I was driving around that Firebird and racing Mustangs and all that, this car was in the sphere, the LSC. And we all thought it was very cool at the time, and quite frankly, I still think it's pretty cool today. And now I am a GM guy, very, very much. I mean, not religiously, you know, I'm not going to go get in fist fights over it or anything, but I'm a GM guy. You know, Firebirds, Camaros, you know, Corvettes, that sort of thing. And the Ford guys were over there, and this was one of the Ford guys' cars. But secretly, I just absolutely loved it. You know, it was quick when I was a kid. It was European in a way that, you know, look, I like big V8s and hot rods and all that stuff, but we were coming into an era where, you know, the Mercedes were getting kind of cool, you know, Roadhouse and that sort of thing, and this car harkened to that. So I always had a secret thing for the LSC, and I've been wanting to get one for quite a while, and none have ever entered my sphere. And then finally, a few weeks ago, a couple months ago, whatever that, December, one showed up at a local auction. This one, you know, I was in North Carolina at the time, but I bid by telephone and ended up with it. And man, I have been enjoying the absolute hell out of it. I've been driving it. I've been fantasizing about hanging on to it. But I'm not, you know, look, it's got to go. It just, but I thought, man, what a great collector car this thing is. And, you know, even again, being a GM guy, it just pushes all the right buttons for me. And to me, it looks better now than it did then. The styling is, look, when you look at it now, you can see it as a classic car. It's unbelievable to me, but it's true. You can see it as a classic car. If you looked at it at the time, it had to be viewed within the purview of the complete Ford lineup. And as someone rudely pointed out on Twitter the other day, you know, it has the roofline of a Tempo coupe. I think it's just cruel. And some of the automotive press at the time said it looked like an overweight Thunderbird, you know, the new Aero look. But I don't think that's entirely fair. And looking at it now, I really think the design has held up quite nicely. I mean, you know, first of all, it was the first American car to have, well, sorry, the first modern American. I had some shit in the 30s, but that had these form-fitted composite headlights with replaceable bulbs, European style. And look, when I was a kid in the mid-'80s, European lights were kind of cool, and this thing came out with them, and it was kind of neat. And yet it also has this sawtooth grille in the classic Mark style that holds true to Lee Iacocca's vision of a Thunderbird with a Rolls. Oh, they're great, wonderful. There's phone calls coming in. God. Anyway, it holds true to Lee Iacocca's vision of a Thunderbird with a Rolls-Royce grille, and I think it looks pretty neat. And in LSC form, it looked pretty damn sporty. I mean, you've got 16-inch wheels, at least in this later iteration. You've got these very cool Marshall, I'm sure it sounds French, you know, fog lights at the bottom, lower skirt, cladding looking stuff. You know, you still got chrome around the windows, you got chrome mirrors, you got chrome bumpers. You know, they still had to appeal to the traditional buyer, but you can certainly feel like Ford was trying to, you know, make something a little bit more contemporary at the time. You go back to the Mark VI, you know, 1 year prior to the release of this car, and it looks like something the Duke was driving in Escape from New York with the chandeliers on the fenders. I mean, you know, there was nothing sporty about it. And even though I did love that sort of thing, you could not even begin to argue that it was in any way, shape, or form a driver's car. Whereas this thing is actually a hot rod Lincoln, you know. There was talk a few years ago about Lincoln doing something kind of exciting by putting, you know, a car on the Mustang platform and, you know, making it a hot rod and charging up their lineup. And, well, you know, they already did it. They did it here in the 1980s. 1984, in fact, when it was released. Right after that Panther platform thing, they took this on the Fox body, the Mustang platform, with a V8, although not the Mustang's V8, and made a big gamble and said, look, you know, our traditional buyers are great, but we want to try and draw some of these Euro guys. And, you know, to some small extent they did. Not immediately. You know, sales were pretty good right out of the gate. You know, it did fairly well. But it was different. It was different from the other stuff on the road. And it was part of Ford's then new global strategy of, competing on a global scale and making cars for the world. God, that sounds so utterly gay now, but then it meant something, and it was kind of interesting, and it was a part of that. And it was, look, they went to a market that was dominated by the Europeans, the luxury sport coupe. I mean, you're talking about Mercedes-Benz SEC, BMW M6, 635, that sort of thing. There were some cars in this car's price range, which was half of what those cars were, by the way. But it did acquit itself very well. And even if the press at the time, liked to talk about the areas where Lincoln came up short, and they certainly did, I think the car acquitted itself very, very well. They did have to retain... They couldn't make it a full-on sports car, obviously, and they couldn't make it too stiff riding or too unrecognizable to the... And look at these giant dogs. I don't know where the hell these things... The first time I've seen them at Peter's house, one of them had drool hanging, like a foot worth of drool looking at me. Very unsettling. Now it's heading this way. Just kind of keep going and pretend I don't see him. And I don't remember. Look at this thing. Yeah. Okay, yeah, I see ya. You just put those barks away. We're gonna keep going and pretend this isn't happening. But anyway, look. So Ford had. Oh, for the love of God! All right, Rouse, out. Go on. Go find your mother. Go on. Yep. Go on. Go on now. Go on. Oh, for the love of God. All right, look, I'm going to pause it for a minute and recapture my thoughts and see if I can't find somebody to talk these demons down. All right, let's keep going before these creatures come back. So anyway, look, long story short, I think the car did great, and even if the press at the time was pretty hard on it, I think that was part of their Euro-centric thinking. Everything had to be like, this sort of dark, somber, luxury coupe that just didn't have any hearkening to where America had come from. And I think Lincoln put enough of that in this car to make everybody happy, with enough of the new thoughts as well to make some of those people happy. And obviously it worked out. They didn't sell by the truckload, but they sold pretty damn well. And they did just fine. Looking at the styling of this car, okay, so you've got those composite headlights, and they came out right when the car did in '84, and were a first. You've got lovely little lines running from the grille down the middle of the hood. You've got the chrome mirrors. They did make a GTC version of this car that was all monochrome and looked good. But I think this thing looked fine with the chrome. There was also a Bill Blass and a Versace version. They dumped the Versace version later, but if you wanted the pure chromy luxury mark, you could get it. And then the LSC, gave it a little bit of sporty credentials. Getting into they say it was a little bit fat in the middle, but I think it looks fine. You've got a sloped windshield, you've got a sloped roof, kind of a interesting curvature to it as it slopes back. The chrome door handles. By the time this car rolled around, you've got these BBS copies, or maybe they're BBS wheels, but either way, they look just like BBS wheels, and they look good. 16-inch 60 series rubber, nice. You still got a power antenna. Lovely, very minimized taillights, although surrounded with chrome with reflectors in the middle. The Continental hump, which, even in the 80s, did the young buyers of this car, if there were any, know that they were hearkening to Continental kits from, the 50s and beyond? I don't know, maybe. But either way, I think it worked, and I don't think the car would have looked right without it. So I kind of like the spare tire hump. And you got Ford's Securicode system there, the, keypad on the door, famous Ford thing. And then look, they put a lot of equipment in this thing for a base price of $25,000, which of course wasn't cheap at the time. I mean, assuming inflation has caused like I think it's probably 70 grand in today dollars, but it was still half the price of what a high-end Mercedes or BMW was, and to some extent it gave you the same credibility. I mean, you could certainly pull up to the country club in it or the strip club or wherever and look like a successful guy, so you weren't cheapening out by having this thing, and it came with some pretty damn good equipment. I mean, they had to sell it as a technologically advanced car in the 80s, so it had a digital dash that would later be replaced by gauges on the LSC, but we'll get into that. It had a trip computer and message center, automatic climate control, standard, four-wheel air suspension. That has its ups and downs. Four-wheel disc brakes, eventually with ABS, and in fact it got ABS 6 months before the Corvette did. So it was the first American car with 4-channel anti-lock brakes to come out, which, was a pretty big deal. Had a power deck lid release and suck down. It had the auto-dimming mirrors, worked in a sensor on the mirror. They didn't have 8 tracks. By the time this thing came out, cassettes were it. They offered CBs for a couple of years. But look, they had dual power seats, power windows, power mirrors. The car was very equipped. JBL audio, leather everywhere. It was a very, very well-equipped car for the money, and I think it did extremely well against the European competitors. And the headlight thing is cool. Again, Ford lobbied the NHTSA to get that done. They wanted these headlights in this car when it came out because, again, they're trying to have that Euro vibe, and it took some doing, but they got it done, and they came out with them when the car was released in '84. It was also a Continental for 2 years before it was a Lincoln and the old traditional, weird Ford nomenclature thing. So it was a Continental Mark VII, 84 to 85. And then in 86, which was a seminal year for the car, it went to becoming a Lincoln. One of the reasons 86 was seminal was because of the engine choices. In fact, let's just get into that. We're just going to dive right in. In fact, I'm going to use the Secura code to open everything. So we're going to start with the trunk. Look at that, works. I figured that out because they put the code on these hinges back here, so it worked out good. Being a 91, this car now has the little space saver tire over there on the left. Some of the complaints initially was the full-size tire mounted on the bottom took up trunk space. Well, they fixed that, so this car has pretty good trunk space. For what, again, children, no issue at all. Couple toddlers, no problem. You could probably even jam a teenager back there, and it's well carpeted, so they're going to be fine. You even have a little pocket there. I don't know what you're going to put in there, but you have a pocket. There's some tools, jacking instructions for those unfamiliar, and good sized trunk, everything you need. And of course, one of these great little 80s style electric suck downs, which I'm a big fan of. I just think that's cool. Let's have a look under the hood. So under the hood on these cars was initially a drawback and then became a real benefit. Oh, God. Okay, everything's heavy. So here it is. In this car, we have the 5-liter, 4.9, but 5-liter HO, 225 horse V8 right out of the Mustang GT. In '84, when the car came out, they did not put that in. They put in this 150 horse, kind of anemic V8, which just didn't cut the mustard. But if that wasn't miserable enough for you, you could get a 2.4-liter BMW Source diesel, which, had like no oomph at all, could probably barely create any forward momentum. Supposedly there's one or two out there with handshakers, but I've never seen or heard of one. But most, of course, had the automatics, and they were just hated. And I think they sold in the hundreds, whereas the first year, 38,000 of these things got sold. I don't even think 1,000 of the diesels made it, but they did it. They tried it. Bad enough that it only lasted a couple of years. But But in '86, they took that 150 horsepower anemic V8 in the LSC and replaced it with the 200 horsepower V8 from the Mustang GT. And that's when the American car writers started to take note, because look, power is a big... It overcomes a lot of negatives for, you know, some people. You put a big, powerful V8 in a car, even if the rest of it kind of sucks, you end up loving the motor, and that's what happened. So in '86, this thing went on the Car and Driver 10 Best list. Sales perked up to where they were in their initial year, and people ended up liking the car again. And then Lincoln kept tweaking it. They kept making it a little better. They stiffened the air suspension on the LSC, tightened up the steering, you know, changed the interior. They kept developing the car. And again, this was exactly at the time when I was following cars like this and just absolutely loved them. And we all knew that these things had the Mustang engine in them, and they were pretty cool, and that they were Fox-based. So I love it. You know, as time went on, they kind of cheapened the LSC and the Mark VII Bill Blass. Both had the Mustang engines, both had the same suspension, both had the same brakes. You know, they had to do away with all the differentiation. But, you know, they did, and it worked out fine, and the car carried on, I want to say, until '92, maybe a couple in '93, but not many, before it was replaced by a very strange-looking Mark VIII, which was a neat car with 32-valve V8, but it was very strange-looking, maybe to match the strange-looking Riviera at the time. But the MSC earned and still has a great place in my heart, and I absolutely love it, and I have so been enjoying having this thing around, and it makes me sad to sell it. I'm putting it in this Carlisle Lakeland auction in a couple weeks. I'm going to drag it up there. It's going to have to do pretty good money for me to sell it, because I'm just not giving this one away. I'm too attached to it. You know, I'll drag it up to North Carolina with me and drive it around there if I have to, but I do like it. So look, anyway, I'm going to get my crap in the trunk, and then we're going to hop in, have a look at the interior, and go for a spin. Bear with me one moment. All right, so let's have a look inside this thing. So look, Ford resisted the urge, again, to make it a little bit too blingy and in line with the prior Mark. It does look, you know, pretty contemporary, even for now, inside this thing. You know, the instrumentation, and again, this is a later iteration after they'd already sort of updated the dash and whatnot, but even in '84, the thing did look modern and did a pretty nice job of it. The door panels, you know, I'm not going to say they're the highest quality out there. You know, it's got some kind of chintzy trim around here, which doesn't quite fit the way it would on a Euro car. But, you know, there's some nice bunched leather in it, and it's held together fairly well. They did put these Mercedes-style seat adjusters in it. It has lumbar and bolster support, which is, again, kind of sporty. Nice leather-wrapped perforated steering wheel. Your Canadians in the back, they're going to be pretty chipper, I have to say. You got pretty good leg room, no issues there. You got this nice bunched leather, you got an armrest, you got a couple of JBL speakers back there, you know, you've got ashtrays, which, you know, any proper 80s car should. You know, you might end up with some strippers in the back on a night out, so they're going to be smoking for sure, and everyone back there is going to be pretty happy. No issues at all, and you could even fit 3 across, so it's a 5-passenger vehicle for, you know, a luxury sport coupe. You even have pockets here to put some, you know, weapons or drugs or whatever you want to hide from the state trooper. All very nice stuff. Let me get my water and a little paper mat in here. So, I mean, white interior, Oxford white. Supposedly this is called a Fire and Ice edition, 91, you know, with this sort of dark red. There's the, look at these angry dogs. They're probably heading out. I've left the gate open, so now I'm going to be in trouble. Oh, God, let me stop these things before. Hey, puppies! Puppies! Hello, black dog. Come on now. Come on. There he is. Oh, you poor old guy. Oh, stiff in the mornings. I know the feeling. Aw. Oh, you're a good boy. You're a drooler, but you're a good boy. Go on. Go home. Go find mom. Go find dad, whoever the hell they are. Go find them. Good boy. Oh, there they go, limping their way back. Poor old guys. Anyway, Fire and Ice Edition. I don't know if it's true, but it's Oxford white inside, which is a seriously impractical color for the inside of a vehicle, with this sort of burgundy firing look outside. And yeah, I think it looks pretty nice. So anyway, I'm going to put down my paper mat, bunch it up. Lovely, wonderful. Hop in, we'll see what we got. Alright, so let's fire this Mustang engine up. Yeah, and comes to life with a nice growl, and it does bing at you, which is wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. But anyway, look, here it is. So here's the analog cluster that you got with the LSCs in later years, you know, part of the sporty thing. The Bill Blass cars still had the digital instrumentation. It does have... it's hard to do on a Ford, but you've got tilt steering anyway. That obviously is standard. You got your light control over here, which is a weird mix of cheap, original Ford Tempo style light switches with automatic dimming and auto lamps. You know, down there you got your fog light switch. You got cruise control on the steering wheel. You got your wiper switch there. Over here you got some idiot lights for airbag oil belts. You know, because they were stuck making this cluster area the same size as the digital cluster, the gauges are pretty small, and there's no you know, there's no oil pressure, voltmeter, that sort of thing. So you still have to have a bunch of idiot lights. They moved the stereo up here from down there earlier because obviously it's easier to reach. Here's your trip computer with just a row of buttons. I mean, Mercedes would be proud of that, you know, an endless stream. Alarm, you can set an alarm, estimated time, destination, distance, average speed, average economy, you know, whatever. You got a trip computer down there. And then the weird, look at the weird Gothic, you know, it's like haunted house script on the climate control. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And it's also a little bit friggin' indecipherable. So they did borrow that from the Germans as well. I've got defrost on now, which I don't need. And, well, just leave it there. There's your rear defrost. Little useless tray here to put something. You know, leather wrapped shifter, nice enough, 4-speed automatic. You open this guy here, you got an ashtray with a Lincoln encrusted lighter. You got your windows and mirror controls here in the middle. You can lock out your center console here. There's a little push button to get in the bottom area there with a coin holder, fuel door release. Top button to get in your cassette storage. And then here, which I'm going to use now, are these utterly bizarre gimbally drink holders, which just look like the most fragile things on earth and are probably going to break before I even make it back to the shop, but I'm going to give them a shot. Over here we got a glove box. This is interesting. The car came with a Marty report, which is a guy who bought all of Ford's records and now sells them with, you know, Ford probably sad they sold them, but they did, and now this guy sells them to people, and it's kind of neat. You can find out, like, long story short, you take the smallest number, so 139 of these cars were made that were exactly like this one, out of total, whereas 7,000, so about, you know, 8,000 were made for the year, but only 100 or so looked like this. It's garnet red is the color with Oxford white inside. You got moon roof. You got a 327 axle, which is pretty cool. That's kind of sporty. And of course the 5-liter HO. You also get an airbag in the thing, which was early. So this is just a neat report, and here's some crap that the guy wrote about it. He was also apparently in the Mark VII Owners Club, and even though I'm pretty sure they did have a couple of 93s, I could be wrong. I guess the Owners Club is saying they went to 92, so I guess I'll have to listen to what they say. You got some books here. We'll get into it, but whatever. It's got, you know, user's guide, some sort of odd extension for a wiring harness. Let's see if we got anything on the radio. Leave the power antenna away. Fuck's sake. Had a Bluetooth thing in there earlier, and I must have had the volume way up. That was wonderful. Let's see if we got any music we can play instead of insane static. Oh, God.
Your every morning with the free show. Training, treats, and entertainment.
Yeah.
As you can without adding roads is not.
Can you now?
We've had a lot of messages on
All right, the vast wasteland, intellectual wasteland of morning radio. I'm not going to deal with it. But anyway, radio still works and it's all very nice. Let's get the hell out of here. Oh, up here you got a compass because, you know, anyone traditional was going to need that. And a nice big power sunroof you can tilt up or move back. And everything nice with the world. Oh, and of course a couple of cocaine mirrors if you need those. And honestly, the people who drove this car probably would have had an opportunity to, you know, use a little bit of that at the strip club. So anyway, I'm going to pause it there, close these gates up so those hounds can't escape, and then we'll just go on a quick drive. So bear with me one moment. All right, let's give it a go. So, you know, pretty good power. I want to say 0 to 60 was around 8 seconds. By the time this iteration of the car came around, you're talking about a quarter mile. Under 16 seconds, in the 15s. Very, very respectable for the time. You know, quicker than a lot of the cars we were driving and racing. You know, so this thing pulled up next to a Crossfire Corvette and you know, 86 or 87, you know, chances are he'd probably teach the kid driving that thing a lesson. I mean, it was a quick car, and especially so when the Mustang GT V8 started showing up in it. Right now, I think it makes a fantastic collectible. I mean, you know, it's a very simple car to maintain, much simpler than its contemporary German cars it competed with at the time. You know, they've gotten difficult, parts-wise and whatnot, so, and of course expense. So this thing is much cheaper to keep on the road. Pretty much anything you need mechanically is available at Advance Auto. You know, body part-wise, other stuff, well, there's probably not a big aftermarket supply, but there are some dedicated nuts who run Lincoln junkyards and part supply and that sort of thing, and I actually bought some stuff from them, so I know they're out there. And you know, it makes it, look at that thing, there we go. And of course it's a vintage car that you can drive to California from Florida. I mean, it's very comfortable, the seats are comfortable, it has air conditioning, it's got anti-lock brakes, it's got an airbag. It's a very, very drivable classic, and I think that's a big part of its charm right now. You know, plenty of torque, yeah, what, 300 foot-pounds, 225 horsepower, the transmission shifts pretty sporty. This thing still has the airbags, which, you know, they're fine. There must be someone out there servicing them, because I doubt the original ones would have lasted this long. You know, it handles fairly well. It could only do so much. I mean, again, they still had to appeal to the traditional Lincoln buyer, you know? They had to. The Euro guys were never going to be happy at all. They're never happy anyway, but they just weren't going to be, so they had to leave some stuff in there for the older Lincoln guys to still buy the car, and they did, and I think they found a very nice balance. Yeah, it didn't quite do well enough on the skid pad to make road and track happy, but it didn't do too bad either, and it was still much, much sportier than anything Lincoln had going, you know, either at the time or before. So give them all a little credit. And again, I say that as a GM guy. Domestically, who did it compete with? The Eldorado, which is front-wheel drive, so that took the joy out of it. Even if that was kind of a neat car, you're never going to be as cool as you are in a rear drive V8. So I think it bested its domestic competition, and I think it's a lot of fun to own today. So there it is, 1991 Lincoln Mark VII LSC. car that I've been wanting to review for a long time. Finally got the chance to do it. Happy to own this thing. It'll be again up for auction. I'll put a link to it. I don't care if it sells or not. I'll drag it home because I like having this thing, and I could see myself tooling around, you know, the mountains of North Carolina in it, at least in the summer months. And I think it'd be a lot of fun. So appreciate it. You're gonna keep plugging away. And I might do a little video from the shop to show you what I've got going there, and maybe introduce you to Robert the German, who's a lunatic, and we'll see where we go from there. Thanks very much, and we'll see you with the next one. Take care.